Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 10 of our COVID-19 Best Practices in Nursing Home. I am Susan Ryan. I'm the Senior Director for the Greenhouse Project, and I can't tell you how delighted I am that you have chosen to spend the next hour with us today. Really excited about Project Echo and what we are doing to leverage technology to be able to share our best practices. At such a time as this, how important it is to really identify what's working well and how can we learn from others. And so we use case-based learning to be able to share what others are finding in their experiences is working well. And that way we can monitor and manage our outcomes with a desire of getting better. So let's take a look at our agenda for today. We have a poll, a couple polls that we're going to ask you to get your feedback. Real-time feedback is important. Dr. Power is going to do a didactic presentation, Home for the Holidays, or what that looks like this year amid the pandemic. Really happy to have a couple of our friends from Wyoming Life Resource Center, and they are going to share their case presentation and what they're doing, and then a couple polls at the end. So what I'd like to do is introduce my colleague Janet Wright and have her share with you a few of the logistics that will be important for you to understand in order to leverage your time.
Thank you, Susan, and welcome. Today you will be in listen-only mode, meaning that you won't be able to speak on the screen, but we will be recording the session today so that you will be receiving that probably tomorrow. I'll send a copy of the link out for the recording today, along with the resources, the PDFs of the presentations that we are doing today. We will be using the chat box for you to introduce yourself. So please introduce yourself and your organization in the chat box for any IT technical issues that you might have, as well as for any questions and answers when we get to the Q&A portion of the presentation today. Please make sure we encourage you to use your webcams. So if you don't know where to turn that on, down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you should have a little button, usually at the bottom, but it's just a little button where you can click on the video camera, and that'll turn your webcam on.
Thanks, Janet. And I would encourage you, please, let's build a virtual community. And the chat box right now will be the mechanism by which we do that. So questions as well as your introductions belong there. And to support us today is also my colleague, Marla DeVries. Marla, would you say hello to everybody?
Hey everybody, Marla DeVries. I'm Director of Resource Development at the Greenhouse Project, and I will be kind of popping in and out to help facilitate questions. So as Janet mentioned, please use the chat box to introduce yourselves, and as we go through the presentations, to put in their questions for Al and for the case presenters. Thanks.
Thanks, Marla. All right, let's do a poll. Let's get started. And the first poll we always launch is just to kind of find out where you're calling in from. So Janet, if you do that first poll, we really want to understand, are you from the Pacific, the Rocky Mountain area, Southwest, non-contiguous, Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, or outside the US? Really want to hear where you are calling in from. So there's a map to kind of give you a clue in case you're wondering. Just a few more seconds. As many of you as possible, if you could just let us know where you're calling in from. Okay, thank you, Janet, and close the poll. Southeast, I think this is the first time we've had more from the Southeast than the Northeast, but close. 30% of you are from the Southeast and 28% from the Northeast. And look at that, 15% of you are from outside the United States. That's pretty incredible. All right, thank you for that, Janet. And now I'd really like to introduce others that will be supporting our session today. Eric Reguera, would you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me back. My name is Eric Riguera, Director of Nursing Services here at the Jewish Home at Rockley. We're located in Bergen County, New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Always good to have you on these calls. And now I want to introduce a couple guests, but no strangers to us. Chris Shemansky from Wyoming Life Resource Center. Chris, you want to introduce yourself and your colleague Shiloh?
Sure. My name is Chris Shemansky, and I'm the Skilled Nursing Administrator for Wyoming Life Resource Center. And I was basically hired to get us up and running for skilled nursing facility. We are currently licensed as an intermediate care facility. So we're in the process of building 10 greenhouse homes, 10 10-bedroom homes. So we'll have a total of 100 rooms. And we are wanting to share our story about how we have been able to celebrate amidst COVID, and just to share our success story on that. So I will let Shiloh take it from here.
Shiloh, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Shiloh Smith. I work for the Wyoming Life Resource Center. I've been a CNA for 20 years, and I stepped into the activities coordinator role here. I work with Special Olympics as a local coordinator. Happy to be here and share what we did with some of our holiday celebrations, and hopefully you guys can learn from it and I can learn some things from you.
Wow, thank you so much. And we are so glad both of you are here to share those stories. So Jenna, let's do one more poll before I introduce Dr. Power and his didactic. All right, when you think about the last 2 weeks since we met, what has been your greatest challenge? And we've tried to hit just about everything that's there, but if there isn't something that's not been listed, and this is a single choice, so what has been your greatest challenge? Eager to hear what you're wrestling with. All right, Janet, you can close the polls. Visitation strategies. So this is a timely topic in context of the holidays. So 40% of you said it was visitation, another 19% said it was staffing, and 14% said you were likely dealing with a COVID outbreak. So this is challenging times for sure, and I'm sure all of you could probably say at one point or other we have hit one of those. So Dr. Power, I am going to have you introduce yourself and then have you launch your presentation for us.
Okay, thanks very much, Susan. Thanks everybody for being here. This is a little bit of a crazy time, so I do appreciate your being able to be part of this. I'm Alan Power. I'm a geriatrician and educator and consultant from Rochester, New York. And I've been working right along with Eric and with the Greenhouse team for these webinars every 2 weeks, and glad to see you back at such a difficult time. And I'm just going to say a few things before we turn it over to Chris and Shiloh, who I think will have a lot more of substance to say. It's amazing what ornaments you can find already on the internet if you go and do a Google search. So enterprising people have already taken advantage of our difficulties, I guess. I wish that this were an easier topic to talk about than it's going to be. I think there have been missed opportunities. We are worse now than we have ever been. The other day we had 184,000 cases in one day, which is more than the country of South Korea has had since the start of the pandemic for their entire country. And so things are doing pretty poorly here. In New York State, we're starting to clamp down more when people have more than a 5 to 10% positivity testing rate. South Dakota has hit 60% positive with their testing rate. So things are nowhere near under control as we enter the winter and the flu season. And this is no news to the people on the call. And I certainly appreciate what everyone on the call has done when I say missed opportunities. I think the people working in long-term care have been on top of this and have been at the forefront of trying to keep people safe, because we've taken care of a lot of the most vulnerable people when it comes to this pandemic. But I do think there have been failures, in my opinion. There have been failures in leadership at all levels, and there have been, unfortunately, failures of citizens following their civic responsibility to their fellow Americans as far as following good sense guidelines. So this is where we are. For whatever reason, we are not in the place we'd like to be, but we have to move forward. We have holidays coming. So I just want to talk about a few considerations. Should elders be visiting community gatherings? Should staff be visiting community gatherings? What about gatherings at the home? How do we optimize the holidays if there is no family gathering? And maybe just a few reminders of considerations at any kind of gathering for people living with a diagnosis of dementia. And I'm going to leave a lot of that third bullet to Shiloh and Chris, because I know they're going to have a lot to offer there. So this is just a joke thing I saw on social media. Only 6 allowed at Christmas, but 30 for a funeral. So I will be holding a funeral for my pet turkey that sadly passed away on December 25th. That's kind of the way people are looking at this right now, I guess. But should elders go out to family gatherings? Well, a couple of weeks ago when I made these slides, Evan Schulman, who's the deputy director at CMS, said the virus does not care if there's a holiday. So his initial response was, I believe the answer should be no. CMS also is discouraging staff members from off-site work parties. So you might say, well, we'll keep the elders safe, but a bunch of us will go off to a public area and have a dinner. But once again, that, especially in the risk, in the context of the curves of infection we're seeing right now, that also is a risky proposition. And it was also mentioned by CMS that if elders do go out, they may need to have increased testing or isolation when they return to their home. There, just as of today, a new CMS announcement came out. I knew that would happen after I made my slides, but basically they're saying the same thing. They're not saying no visitation. They've learned their lesson about the dangers of complete isolation and quarantine, but they are saying to continue the strict visitation policies we've had, and also that they are very much discouraging elders from leaving their homes and going out to the community during the Thanksgiving holiday. So what's my advice looking at everything that's happening now? It might not have been the same at a different time, but given what's happening right now, and I'm looking at the statistics every single day, I would say most importantly, taking elders out to a family gathering with the rising COVID curve is an extremely risky undertaking. This is the US, and people who live in long-term care are American citizens, and they have the same rights of every citizen. And unless there is a national or state imposed lockdown, citizens have the right to come and go as they please. So I'm not saying that the person who insists on leaving has to be held there against their will, because that is against our rights. But I'm saying that it would be foolish to do so given what's going on now. Lockdowns can be helpful. We're trying to avoid those, of course. Victoria, the state in Australia, which has Melbourne and other cities, had a lockdown for several months. It was quite extreme. The kind of thing probably most of us wouldn't want to see, but as a result of that, they are now open. They haven't had a case, a positive.
I just peeked in the room. The whole room is nothing but fog.
They have a positive case. Just a reminder to mute your microphones. There hasn't been a positive case, let alone a death, in the past few weeks in Victoria. And they are not only open, but they're going to have a football game locally. So as a result, you know, you might say that's drastic, but look where they are and look where we are. So it'd be nice to find a happy medium, but we just haven't had enough engagement at either the citizen or leadership level to get us there. The safest, if someone insisted on going to the community, I would say the safest visit would be to go off holiday, not on the holiday, maybe the day before or after, and with only 1 or 2 family members, not a large family gathering. If people insisted on going to a family gathering and you pressed me and said, how could you make this safer for those who insist on going? Well, I would say the only way to make it safer, and not 100%, would be anyone who's attending that family gathering should be tested within 2 or 3 days, and no one with symptoms or recent documented exposure should be at that gathering. Everyone should have masks and eye shields, except when eating, and during meals, people should be distanced. There should be limited time exposure on site for the elder, and don't forget that even when eating 6 feet apart with your masks off, if the ventilation and air turnover are not good, you're still at great risk. And some states, as I mentioned, will recommend people be isolated or tested on return. How about family gatherings at the elder's home? Well, that does add risk to other residents to bring people in too. I would continue to limit visitation to 1 or 2 per day, and I think this is pretty much what CMS just came out and said today. I would suggest people follow the usual visit guidelines, including compassionate visits. So I'm not saying that you have to be on lockdown, although if you have an outbreak, that may be a different thing. And I'll talk about what's happening locally here in a moment. I think that for family members, testing before a visit is preferred. It's standard here at the St. John's Greenhouse where my mother is living right now. And the usual screening, PPE, and other guidelines, of course, are always in place, and strongly, strongly encourage influenza shots for everyone who works in, lives in, or visits any of your homes. Children, that's a little tougher. They don't get as sick. They can be contagious. They may not be as able to follow guidelines. They may cause commotion and distress. I would suggest that kids stick to the window visits at this point. So how do we make the most of a holiday without a family gathering? Well, certainly engaging elders as much as possible in preparing for the holiday. So how can we do it? Well, once again, we'll hear from Wyoming, but certainly sharing memories of holidays past, helping with decorations, establishing and honoring rituals. And we talk about the importance of rituals with the greenhouse, with Eden Alternative. I talk about it in my books on dementia. And basically, rituals are more than sterile routines. They mean making something meaningful that carries personal meaning out of any activity. And that could be a meal, it could be a holiday, but it could be getting ready for bed, or it could happen during personal care. It could happen during an activity. So a ritual means that people are greeted and invited to participate. It means that there's active engagement of all during the activity. It means that everybody's individual needs and paces are met. It's not a generic thing where you have to keep up or you can't participate. It means that we try to tie into your own history, your own traditions, and have a lot of conversation about that as able. And it also means thanking people and honoring people who have participated. And helping plan and prepare meals. I know at the St. John's Greenhouse Homes, I just got the weekly newsletter right before we came on today. They have made flower arrangements they're going to be delivering to everybody's room. They had a local bakery produce a cupcake tasting event recently, which sounds like a great ritual for me. And as we get into the holidays, if it's customary to have a gift exchange with your faith tradition, that certainly makes sense. But with any holiday, try to include one unique experience from each elder's tradition so that everybody can feel that something that they have honored in the past is part of what's happening today. And once again, sharing gratitude. And just a quick commercial that for those of you who are interested, next Tuesday afternoon, there's going to be a gratitude gathering that's hosted by the Greenhouse Project. And I'm sure that Susan or others will talk more about that. One other guideline that came out from CMS today that once again would make sense for the greenhouses where we have very convivial meals. Just a reminder, it's probably best at this point not to be passing bowls of food around, having people use the same serving spoon, but rather have a server fill people's plates just to decrease transmission during meals, because even the greenhouses will have distance meals because of their open floor plan that can often seat people in different rooms 6 feet apart and share meals together. And then one more reminder, don't forget the dementia basics. Trying to minimize loud or chaotic activities, watching for visual stresses like flashing lights on Christmas trees, or other things that may upset people that don't completely understand what's happening or what the significance is, or maybe just have a lower threshold for being able to tolerate certain sounds or certain sights. Celebrating at a time of day that reflects the elder's best energy. So maybe Christmas dinner at 5 o'clock is not the best time to do it. Maybe it's best to do it at noon. And attention abilities as well. Following each elder's lead regarding the need for quiet time. This doesn't have to be one generic activity. If some people need to break away halfway through, that's what they need. And that will greatly improve everyone's ability to enjoy the holiday. Personalize each elder's space as much as possible per their preference. Make sure that the elder space is being personalized with the elder, not for the elder, so that they can have that sense of autonomy and help to bring their own personal meaning in by decorating the way they want it decorated. Invite each elder to participate and give input into the events, and that might be tasting the sauce for dinner, that might be talking about holiday meals, that might just be sitting in the kitchen area and smelling the foods it's cooking if you don't use words anymore, or having somebody take a taste even though they can't tell you in words how it tastes so that they can enjoy the senses that are involved with preparing the holiday meals. And remember to provide queuing for infection control. Don't lock people away, but make sure that they are able to participate and be out and about in ways that are safer. There's no perfectly safe way of doing it. At St. John's Greenhouse Homes right now, there was a staff member testing positive. No elders for the entire pandemic have tested positive, but they're taking a precaution until December 1st, and they're having people only visit outside and not in the house. But even when people visit in the house, it will be with prior COVID testing. It will be only 1 or 2 family members at a time. It will be scheduled times, and they're also scheduling window visits, so people are up and at the window and ready. But scheduled times in the house, and they only have a few spaces, the screened-in porch, the gazebo, the den, where people visit, so that people are visiting in neutral spaces that can be easily cleaned by the team between visits, rather than having people going into people's rooms. So once again, these kinds of common sense guidelines, and of course family members are wearing masks, face shields, doing all the other PPE. I think these are common sense, and they should happen during the holidays, no less than any other time of year, especially this year. But mainly to be thankful, to be grateful that we are here and able to talk about this, able to take charge and really work proactively to keep us all as safe and happy as possible. So I'm going to stop there, turn it back over to Susan, and thanks everybody for your.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Power. I'm going to ask Janet to launch a poll, but I want those of you, if you've got questions, I want you to kind of get them configured in your mind. And Janet, we do have a poll. We're kind of curious what everybody's thinking about for the holidays. So if you launch that for us, Janet. All right, so what are you doing? Are any elders at your home planning to visit their families on Thanksgiving? None, 1 or 2, more than 2, you're not sure. And then number 2, what will your strategy be for elders who go out for the holiday? And that one is multiple choice. So eager to hear what you're up to.
And once again, there's no right answer. There is safer and less safe, and we have to negotiate risk all the time.
I appreciate you saying that. I think that is a really, really important point. So for sure. All right, just a couple more seconds. Try to get at least half of you. All right, Janet, you can stop the poll. Okay, so most of you are not sure. So maybe the verdict is still out as to who is actually going to go. And that was a close second was nobody's going out. And then a very few of you, 1 to 2 or more than 2. And your strategy when they come back, it sounds like it's isolation when they come back. 60% of you indicated that. So I'm going to turn to Eric, you first, to see if you have any questions for Dr. Power in his presentation.
Well, first of all, Dr. Powers, that's a very good and very informative PowerPoint. And as you said, unfortunately, it's tough times right now, and the guidance for regarding holiday visitation is kind of very sensitive, very crucial, because when the DOH and the CDC send us the guidelines, it's unfortunately when a family member or an elder wanted to go out to have a family visit, unfortunately, when they come back, they have to be isolated for 14 days. The increase in social isolation really turns down or turns off the family member and the elder for the elder to go out, which is kind of sad. So the risk is being more isolated, which is kind of unfortunate and kind of devastating for the elder. Right now, unfortunately, in all the states, majority of the states are having an increased surge of COVID cases. And here in the state of New Jersey, I guess a knee-jerk reaction from the Department of Health, when this is, they reacted, you have to test the staff again every other day, which is a very big task and responsibility. And everybody's on high alert. The issue with this is, of course, you have to use a lot of resources, a lot of manpower, and also the testing. That takes a lot of. And also, what happens with that is, which is good. The staff are very high alert and cautious, but you have that hysteria again and anxiety. which is kind of backfiring to what we're doing in our normal situation or like a month ago. So we try to balance it as much as possible. So what can we do with our elders within? So with educating and proper social distancing and of course masking is very important. Like this morning, we just decided to do a 70s theme. We decided a week ago, but we did it today. So everybody dressed up. I have my medallion. I still have it here. We wear costume. You're in the hallway. The elders lined up. Everybody danced in like a Soul Train style. So socially distanced. So we made it fun and safe. But definitely, it really greatly affected the elders and the family members, especially during this holiday. But we're always thinking, what can we do in our home? How can we make it festive? As you said, Dr. Powers, don't forget all those very precious moments and cultures and traditions. We have to practice that all the time. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. And some of us actually can celebrate the 70s and we're there. So it's, but let me just say, I would love to replace my didactic with your comment. I think you made some really brilliant points, and I just want to highlight that really I was focusing on the risk for the individual elder. And you've talked about some really important things that when we weigh the risk of can mom come out to our house, that we don't think about. We know the risks of isolation. If you were on 2 weeks ago and heard Anne Montgomery's study about the risks of isolation, we know that when you are kept in your room, that is not only social isolation and lack of engagement, but it is not moving, it's deconditioning, increased risk for falls, atelectasis, all those other problems. And of course, if you're living with dementia, that can lead to a lot of distress, just like any of us would be if we had to be in a 200 square foot space for a number of days. You talked about the downstream effects of increased testing needs, of staff being pulled away for testing, of resources that could be used for other things. So it's a good question when family members are tossing this around. So those of you who still aren't sure and saying, well, we got this one family who's wondering whether their mom should go home for Thanksgiving, remind them that visit to Thanksgiving might be balanced against them not being able to see her and her being stuck in a room for 10 to 14 days afterward. And maybe they'd rather come visit her the weekend after Thanksgiving and continue to visit her rather than have her for one day in their house and then lose her for 2 weeks to isolation. So really great points. And I'm glad you brought those up because we always have to think about the larger effects on the home and on the system, the healthcare system, which is so overburdened right now.
Great comments, and thank you for sharing those. Marla, I'm going to ask what questions might have come through for Dr. Power.
Sure. So I encourage people you still have time to put questions in the chat box, but I pulled a few from the registration form. And Al, there were a number around families. So how can organizations involve families? How can they make it still meaningful for the families of the elders? So any advice there?
I'm just talking off the top of my head. I think I'm gonna kick the bulk of that, I think, to Chris and to Shiloh, because they've probably been working on this and may talk about it to some extent. But I think any way people can be involved, and whether it is sending gifts in for a gift exchange, whether it is as I said, at St. John's, they're doing flower arrangements and they're inviting family members to attach a card. The staff is taking care of the flower arrangements, but they're asking people to attach a card if they want to send a special message to the loved one to be delivered next week with the flowers. Using technology, of course, to stay in touch, whether it's, if you can't make a window visit, using some sort of technology such as Zoom or WhatsApp or whatever, to be in touch with people. And I think also filling in, particularly for those people who can't recall, filling in with the staff what those personal rituals around holidays were. How did your mom celebrate the holiday? So that we can fill in and they can bring those special touches. So maybe that person who had a special dish, but they can no longer say what that dish was. If you present that to them on the holiday, that might draw a really special moment and might even elicit, we see those things causing people that don't talk to start talking again and start remembering things. And so find those special touches that can really reawaken those abilities or reawaken those memories in people. That's the one thing I would offer, I guess, and I'll kick the rest to the next presentation.
So you mentioned gift giving. There is another question about, any guidelines or special considerations around handling gift giving.
I don't think so. Early on when everybody was panicking about everything, we were saying, don't worry about what's coming in the mail. Don't worry about what's being delivered to your door. I think anything that is going to head for the mouth, such as a utensil or something, ought to be washed in the dishwasher before it's used, a glass, a favorite coffee mug, those kinds of things. But I really think we're pretty safe. If the gift is wrapped, particularly a few days ahead of time, we know that after a few days, most of the virus that's on surfaces is disappearing if it doesn't have a human host. So my guess is that I'm worried much less about that than I am about all the other things that are going to happen around the holidays, like visitations and going out and that kind of thing.
And then this is probably a little more broad, but one person put in the chat box in relation to what their biggest challenge is, getting residents to comply with safety guidelines. So particularly residents with mental illness or dementia. So any quick
Yeah, it's hard to do quickly. We did a didactic on that before, so I'll just try to pick the high points from what I've said in the past. First of all, it's safer. It's not perfectly safe. You're balancing risk and safety all the time. The risk of taking a person and either restraining them or drugging them or keeping them in the room, in my mind, is usually higher than the risk of going for a walk with them and cueing them and helping give them reminders and making hand washing or wearing a mask some kind of an activity by decorating it, making a game out of it, doing together, getting outside. One of the advantages of the greenhouse model is having direct access to the outdoors. But to the extent that you can do that, put a jacket and hat on and get people out of the building. If they need to move, if they need to walk, and boy, I sure would. If I lived in long-term care, you would not find me not only in a 200 square foot room, but even in an 8,000 square foot greenhouse. I would have to move beyond that. So remember, don't pathologize people's need to do the things that we do. If people need to walk, it's because they're human, not because they have dementia. It's not wandering, it's not elopement, it is walking. And we have to sort of normalize those things and find ways to accommodate them rather than trying to prevent them from happening. I think once again, yeah, there's a risk if you go out of your room, of course there is, but there's also risk to keeping people tied or locked up or sedated in their room because they want to come outside. You got to balance those risks. I see Dr. Chow, who is head of geriatrics. If you have another geriatrics opinion you'd love to give, I invite you or anyone else who's had experience with the clinical aspects to come in and give a second or an alternate opinion or whatever you like as well. She's shaking her head, so I won't.
I know, I couldn't tell if she was going to unmute or not, so okay.
She just introduced herself while you were asking the question, and so I couldn't help but notice her. Sorry to call you out like that, Serena.
Yeah, well, she agrees. So she did put that in the chat box. So thanks for weighing in. Let's transition now. I want to make sure, and Dr. Power, you referred to Chris and Shiloh and the presentation that they're going to share with us. So again, more questions pertinent to the lived experience that they're going to share with us. Please get those questions formed and into the chat box. So let me turn it over to Chris and Shiloh.
Thank you, Susan. Well, I just wanted to point out, first of all, that the picture there on the first slide, that was done by one of our houses, and you can tell they put a lot of effort into that, and that was part of our fall decorating contest, as well as ultimately our Halloween celebration. And Halloween typically at Wyoming Life Resource Center has been a very big tradition. And I've never seen a place that's celebrated Halloween like they do here. And people just said, you know, we still have to do something because we haven't really been able to get out and do anything. And they said, can we figure out a way to do this? And we have some of the buildings that are partially completed, we're under construction. So we figured that we could use one of the buildings, and we started thinking a little bit out of the box, and we we just had a lot of restrictions we had to work around, but we had some glimmers of hope. So if you go to the second slide, please. So when given lemons, let's make some lemonade. And we had to, as I said, we had to work around a lot of restrictions, and we were dealing with a lot of unknowns. And then we thought about what if, and we had to determine, okay, can we get other people in a larger room together? And so those are some of the bullet points there on the slide. Will tell you what we had to start with. And our basic premise was, okay, we've got this space now, and we have a new gymnasium. We feel like we can use that. And these were the guidelines we started off with. Our administrator here, Jeremy Forbes, said we could do this, but we don't want any more than 25 people in the gym at a time. And that would include both staff and visitors. And he took that based upon guidance from our state of Wyoming health orders. And we kind of just took it from there. So starting out with the room. And then everybody, staff and visitors, wore masks or face coverings. Clients, for our clientele, do not wear those. We are, at this point, we work with people with intellectual disabilities. So them keeping a mask on would be quite a challenge. So we did have a visitor come, and he had to go through the checkpoints upon going through our security gate. So he had to come and be temped before coming on site, and he had to wear a mask. And he was our DJ, and he's done that in the past. And our residents just love him and love the music, and they love to dance. So he also had to stay distanced from the clients. And I would like Shiloh to share a little bit more about how we did that.
Hello. So what I did as the activities coordinator, you know, it's scary coming into stuff like this because you're thinking of all the risks. You know, what's going to happen if someone gets sick? What's going to happen, you know, if this guy coming in being the DJ, you know, there's just a lot of unknowns. So we got together with administration, and the ad team and nursing sat down together. We were able to come up with, we staggered the parties. So not everybody was there at the same time. Different areas came for our blocks. Anyway, so the DJ, what maintenance did was they had a coffin that they made. It was just a wooden box, and they put a little scary guy in there. And so the coffin was in front of the DJ, and then maintenance made all these styrofoam tombstones. And I made sure they were all 6 feet apart, you know, because you know, you go to a graveyard, you don't want to step on. Anyway, so they were all 6 feet apart. And then we had a chair on either side, which it was probably about 12 feet wide, and not the coffin, but the whole setup. And we strung caution tape all the way through everything. So that way it was virtually impossible. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, but it was pretty hard for anybody to be able to get within a good 10 feet of the DJ. So, you know, in the past, like we've had him for all of our Christmas parties, people up here love to party. So they'll come up, and he's really, you know, he understands. They'll come up and play with the lights and talk to him and everything. And we just didn't want to put people in that position, you know, him feeling uncomfortable and the clients to be set up to possibly contract COVID. You know, we were kind of trying to lessen the risk of that. So yeah, it was pretty neat. It was a lot of fun, and the clients enjoyed it, having the whole graveyard set up in front of the DJ. So is there another slide, or?
Yeah, next slide would be great. Great segue. So this is talking about our phased approach, and as Shiloh had mentioned, we had two 2-hour time slots in the morning and in the afternoon, And I do want to just segue to the picture up there in the corner. That's a couple of our staff at one of the tables. And they were doing, was it tattoos, Shiloh?
Mhm. Yep, we had tattoos.
Little tattoos at that table. So when we were thinking about who could we put together during these time slots, we thought about what are we doing right now with day programming. And our residents in the ICF, they go to day programming. That's part of their active treatment. So we were thinking about how could we group those people that are already going at the same time, because we've had to change the schedule due to COVID. So we tried to coordinate that with these two-hour time slots so that the same people that are normally together at day programming would be together here at in the gym for the Halloween party. So each group had an hour to celebrate, and staff would sign up. We had a schedule for staff to sign up to help, and they had 1 or 2 hour slots to assist, and they were supposed to clean up after each session. And then we had more thorough cleaning after the morning session in order to prepare for the afternoon session. Staff were only allowed to serve. We did not want the residents involved with that, and they were consistently working in one area in order to prevent that cross-contamination. And then the staff had their own refreshments that were provided in a different location. So I'm going to hand it over to Shiloh and let her talk a little bit more about that.
Like I said before, I was a little nervous about having everybody in one spot, and reaching out to administration and nursing really helped. So all these places were already going to day programming. We have, I think, 3 day programming sites here on campus. We have 11 houses. So the challenge was getting together and saying, okay, we can only have 25 people. That includes staff and clients. We need to try to make sure that the people that are going are, already around each other. I mean, it was pretty detailed, but they came. There were 2 houses that came to the first, 3 houses, all based on how many people lived in that home. And they had an hour. So we had 5 tables set up. The first table that they came to is an activity. The next table that they came to, we have ladies on campus that are able to make balloon animals. We also blew up balloons that were kind of scary. And the clients could go to that table and just choose what they wanted, whatever. I mean, they had a pretty big selection, which was really neat. Then the next table they came to, they were tattoos. And what we did with those was we had everybody, we used paper towels instead of washcloths. We threw everything away. And then we had a place for clients to be able to sit and eat, which they already share meals at the same time. And then we had the DJ, and then we had the cornhole game. So all of this is all spaced out. And whenever people would leave and the next wave would come in, if you will, we would clean in between. There was a table that was set up that just had hand sanitizer, gloves, disinfecting wipes, everything that we needed to be able to keep the place safe. So, yeah, and then we also have the MORE team here on campus, and it's a group of staff members that have developed kind of like a council to be able to do things for staff, just solely staff. So we had Girl Scout cookies that were donated to us, and we were able to set those up outside of the client party. And there was a little lounge area. It was pretty cool. And people could go out there and get what they wanted while their clients were inside celebrating Halloween.
Great. Well, thanks, Shiloh. Next slide, please. So we did what we could with what we had to make it fun. And as Shiloh mentioned, we had the separate table set up with all the cleaning supplies. we'd had social distancing. I wasn't actually there, but I know that you had said there was a door propped open for ventilation. And it was a chance for everybody to get back some normalcy and get back into the ritual of celebrating and gathering. And this is really a tradition that has gone on for years on this in this community. And our clients, our residents, they love to dance. And being around the DJ, they just love to see the lights, and they like to get moving. And so it was nice to be able to have that for them to do. And Shiloh, I don't know, they're the nurse with the, is that a tennis racket down in the
Let me look.
right-hand corner of the,
Oh, she was a bowl of Fruit Loops.
oh, it was a bowl of Fruit Loops. I thought it was a tennis racket. Okay.
And she made that. She actually, we had a client, or not a client, but a staff Halloween costume contest, and the clients judged that contest, and she won. She was one of the ones that won. We had 4 that won. The clients picked 2 from the first party, because we had 4 hours total, 1 from each party that was there from each hour slot. So her name is Sue. She's pretty awesome, and she made that herself, and she won the contest. So.
Yeah, well, that's great. All right, well, next slide. Well, we plan to do something very similar for Christmas. And Shiloh's got a lot of ideas that she'd like to share. And just brief everybody, Shiloh, on what is our plan for Christmas?
Oh my goodness, I have a lot. So
Yeah.
To start out with, we always have a tree lighting ceremony right after Thanksgiving, and kind of like Lander, the community does. We have our Christmas tree that's situated right outside of one of the old day programming sites. It's a huge, beautiful building. And normally what we would do is we would have like holiday movies playing inside of Emerson. That's the name of the day programming site. And then we would have hot chocolate, cookies, you know, get in the spirit. And then whenever it starts to get a little bit dark, everybody comes outside and we say, okay, you ready? And you count down, and then the tree lights up and it's a wah. So we can't all do that this year. But what we are gonna do, I've spoke to the kitchen, and we're gonna have like a grab and go snack. The kitchen is really good, along with, I'd like to think myself, I hope, at knowing what everybody's dietary guidelines are, their mealtime guidelines. So if they need pureed, if they need bland, if they need anything like that, we know those things. So I'll go over to the kitchen, we'll make up all the cookies, we'll label them with each client's name on them, and then they'll have a grab and go so they can take their snack with them. It's a pretty large area, so everybody could probably stay socially distanced. And we're still going to light the Christmas tree, and I'm just going to have to be especially loud and crazy, and, you know, try to get everybody involved. I'm thinking that we may, with the rising COVID cases on campus, have to do this a lot like my plan for the New Year's, which I haven't talked about that, but we've been experimenting with like Google Meet, and everybody's starting to figure out how to get on that to keep the campus connected. And so what we were thinking is for New Year's Eve, I'll be at a location that will be well lit. It'll be about 8 o'clock at night, and we're gonna have our own ball and watch it drop. And all the houses will be able to chime in. It's still a work in progress, but that's probably how we're also gonna do the Christmas tree lighting, because we do have clients that are unable to leave the home and are quarantined COVID positive. So, then we have Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and some unsuspecting victims get nominated to do that every year, and everybody runs for me. Nobody will talk to me for a while. But we'll have Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and they're going to, the Wyoming Life Resource Center usually buys presents for the people that live here, and we're going to go house to house. And we will deliver those presents outside of the home, and everybody, you know, like outside the windows, you see the commercials where grandkids are visiting grandma and grandpa at the nursing home outside the window. It'll be a lot like that. And everybody will get a wrapped gift from Mr. and Mrs. Claus. We want to have a party, a Christmas party, and we would set that up a lot like what we did the Halloween party. The difference is we have ornament exchanges between houses. We're also going to, at the party, there will be a table. Instead of getting tattoos for Christmas, they will be able to purchase gifts for each other. So I have a client store on campus where people can come, since they can't leave grounds, and purchase goods at the store for like 50 cents, $1, mostly snacks. But we also buy like word searches, cologne, toiletries, anything, you know, activities, anything that you would buy at a store normally. So I'm going to get some gifts and I'll set them up on that table. And we have some that are really close, best friends, and they can buy a gift for whoever they want, you know, client-wise. And then the next table will be set up for them to wrap that gift, and then they'll have something to give to somebody that they care about, even if they can't really be around them. We can deliver those. So what else? And then with the refreshments, we'll do it a lot like the Halloween party. We'll have all that, you know, someone manning that table, and we can give those to the clients as they come. So
Perfect.
was there anything else? Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, and then we are taking volunteers for carolers. So if any of you feel like coming to Lander, you know, in spirit, via Zoom, whatever, we are going to have a group of people. Last year, one of the churches from the community came and they did some Christmas caroling up here. And it took about an hour. They went around the whole campus, and oh, it was so much fun. And so we are going to do that again this year. We're just going to use some of the staff. They ran from me last year, but they are not getting away from me this year. So, but we plan to do that too.
Yeah. Thanks, Shiloh. Appreciate it. All right, next slide, please. So to kind of wrap up what we talked about and the lessons we learned and applying this to future planning events, you know, as we stated earlier, we had to start off with what was our space. And then we looked at our state health orders that were related to public gatherings. And a lot of times using the restaurant guidance is good for that, because it's really specific as to how many tables you can have set up and how many people at a table and so forth. And then just using your creativity, determine what you can do. And Shiloh's so good about thinking out of the box and coming up with ideas I would have never even thought of. And then looking to CDC and the CMS in your state to create your framework that you have to work from. I know that as Al had mentioned, CMS did just release their guidance on holidays, and it really hasn't changed that much, but that's another resource you can look at. So next slide. Last slide, please. Or next, yeah, okay. Here's the resources that I put up there for where you can go to get guidance, just the different documents there. The state of Minnesota has a great toolkit as well. And I did say CMS will soon be releasing, and that guidance was just released yesterday, I believe, on that. So yeah, and that picture at the bottom of the slide there, Shiloh, do you remember what house that was?
All right, I was reading the questions. Let me look. That looks like 404. That was 404. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they get into all the stuff on the wall. So anyway, that was just another celebration that we tied into our Halloween event as well.
Yeah, we had the house decorating contest, and there were 3 winners. And what I asked for whenever we did that was for people to take pictures and send them to me. So I got a lot of pictures just to see involvement. And it was really neat to see some of the clients get involved. Like I got pictures of people you would never have thought putting leaves on the wall. Some in this house right here that you can, it's our skilled, not skilled, but more acute care clients. And it's really cool to see them get so excited about doing things like this. And then we also asked for a story to express what was meaningful to the clients about fall. And so some of these, trying to see, those might be the stories, but we did get some stories, and it was just really neat to see everybody get involved. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, last slide. Next slide.
I'm sorry, my clicker is not clicking.
Oh, okay.
No. Okay, there you go.
Okay, well, yeah. So this was just our final slide. Any questions you may have, and we just threw up our contact information there. If you want to give us a call, we'd be glad to share any more ideas that and just get some input from you as well. I wanted to just make a comment about the picture at the bottom there. That's two of our staff members. And the one lady in the dress she's in a twister dress. So I thought that was quite original. And the other one is, Shiloh, help me out. Is that a leprechaun?
yep, that's Linda.
Linda, yep.
I know she's a margarita.
Okay, she's a margarita. Okay, all right. So yeah, so that was what we did. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Chris and Shiloh. Wow, what creativity. That's pretty amazing. So I'm going to, Janet, if you want to just go back to our Hollywood Squares. I'd love, Dr. Power, do you have any comments, suggestions, questions for Shiloh or Chris?
Thanks for the great presentation. Just a couple of quick observations, just picking up on some of the great points you made. One of the great points you made that we don't think about is that, we tend to think about barriers, and we tend to think about decorations. And you can use design to create spacing, to help people move the way you want them to move, to help them gather the way you want them to gather. And so that idea of being creative and using the decor to actually control people's movement and behavior, if you will, is a great thing. And just, a lot of great suggestions there that were some that people could take, and others just to give you the idea of how to think with your own population of residents, with your own culture, really opening people's eyes to those possibilities. And so I really appreciate that. And the fact that you're planning ahead. And I think the wise thing right now, based on what I said before, is to plan for things to not change through the holidays significantly. If they get better, hey, that's a great surprise, and we can relax a little bit. But it's better to plan this way and be pleasantly surprised than maybe to expect some lightening of regulations and then have to backtrack. So thanks for that. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. What about you, Eric? Any questions or suggestions, comments?
Oh, just comment. Just want to thank Shiloh and Christine for being creative. I know this is a lot of work, and you always think about, what, we always have to do something better, push that envelope, and we always keep preaching that to our staff members as well, because at the end of the day, the reaction of the staff and the elders are priceless. That's all. It's all worth it. So again, congratulations for your hard work.
Thank you.
Well, I would say, Eric, your community and their community should sometime get together for a dance party.
Yes, as soon as this is over, we need to get together.
Sure.
We can do it on
Exactly.
Zoom.
Yeah, I know.
So Marla, let's go to you before we close this out. Any questions that came up?
Yeah, there were a couple, and so Shiloh mentioned using carolers. I thought that was a great example because one of the questions was around using outside volunteers to help celebrate Christmas Day. So I don't know if there are other suggestions about how do you utilize and leverage volunteers when they can't come into the home.
So we used to have people that would be more than willing to come up, but it's against campus policy right now. Like we can't have those people. You know, the Zoom, the Hangouts, all that stuff. But I've been turning a lot more to staff. You know, a lot of like administration, they're wonderful. And those were people that, you know, typically, I'm not saying I never thought of them as, you know, being able to be utilized. That sounds terrible. But I don't know. It's just we have to band together more. And we're not able to get the volunteers that we used to. We have people from the community that will send us things, you know, and that's great. But yeah, we'll just have to, like I said, I'll chase them down, you know, bribe them with food, something, and they will. But people have been great about stepping up, and we'll stand outside the windows and, you know, outside the doors and all that. But as far as visitors and volunteers, we've just been asking for things that we can get. Like I have a friend that owns a pizza shop around here, you know, and he'll send stuff up for the staff and all
Nice.
that. But and then we have Takeout Tuesday where I take orders from every client on campus that wants to participate, and I will go to any restaurant they want and we bring it on campus. So yeah, just things like that. But we don't have a lot of volunteers right now that can come on campus. So
One final question, and this could be for Shiloh, Chris, Eric, you might want to weigh in, Al. So specific to COVID and isolation units, where residents are unable to gather, any suggestions or ideas on how to make the holiday special? So anything specific with that caveat?
I'm pointing to Eric. I think Eric's probably got more experience.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
again, what Christine and Shiloh did, that's a perfect example. You know, I mean, be creative. You know, I mean, follow your CDC, CMS guideline and the DOH guidelines. You know, always adhere to that. Masking, social distancing. You know, I mean, keep everybody safe. You know, unfortunately, we have to limit the amount of participants. So whenever you do this, you know, you always have to, unfortunately, you have to do on the cautious side. But what they did was a perfect example. I mean, always be creative. Unfortunately, in the COVID section, of course, you know, if you have a COVID cohort, you know, it's very limited on what we can do, you know, in the COVID section.
are you referring to people that are isolated just to their rooms? Is that what the question was, or just to the facility?
If there's a unit that is, you know, perhaps a number of rooms that is that COVID unit.
Turkey bowling. That's one thing I've been thinking about up here too. I haven't said anything, Chris, don't get mad. But we were talking about turkey bowling, where you would just take canned goods and use a frozen turkey, don't take the wrapper off, and you can bowl with that, you know, and you can do that per unit. There's a lot of really good ideas. I am not going to like say that I've just sat up and, you know, thought of all this by myself. I have asked my staff, I've asked the internet, you know, just utilize your resources. And yeah, you can always, there's some amazing things that people are doing right now. And, you know, I draw from that a lot.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. This was tremendous and really got us all thinking more creatively, I think, than when we initially started the session. So thank you for sharing. I have one final poll for all of you to weigh in on. So can you launch that? We're talking about census recovery. Undoubtedly, many of you have been hit by a dip in your census. So we'd love to hear a little bit about what you're doing to earn back public trust to positively impact census recovery. So if this is pertinent to you, go ahead and participate in that first question. And the second one is really about workforce shortages and how they have impacted your ability to take admissions during the pandemic. So if you all would take a moment, read through it, and give us your responses. And these polls help to inform kind of what we do going forward in our next session.
Wow. Interesting.
So I'd love to hear what you're doing. If you've got other creative ideas that are not listed, please feel free to put that in the chat box. Okay, Janet, you can close the poll. So it looks like all of the above, a little social media, regular communication with stakeholders, sharing COVID updates about your rates at your nursing home. And the workforce shortages, it looks like we do not have a workforce shortage that impacts our ability to take new admissions. That's wonderful. 62% of you said that. Well, that is wonderful. Next session's topic, we have a slide for that, Janet. I believe it is on census recovery, and so that will be 2 weeks from today, and we'll look forward. That's the 3rd of December as I think about it. And then this is the gratitude gathering that Dr. Power referenced. Please go to our website if you would like to be a part of it. It is a virtual gathering. When we think about celebrations, and Al, you referenced it in your slide, the attitude of gratitude. So this is a time for us to really gather at the virtual table to just really say thank you. And we've got lots of people that are going to share some of those expressions. So I hope you'll join us for that next Tuesday, as well as for our next ECHO session, which is December 3rd. Thank you, everyone, for hanging with us a few minutes over, and thank you for all the work that you're doing each day to keep elders and staff safe and to have fun in the process. So take care, everyone. Thanks again, Dr. Power. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Shiloh and Chris.
Enjoy your
Bye-bye,
holiday.
everyone.
Okay.
Be well.